Everyone, and welcome back to Old Spook Lane Creepy Chats. I am Patricia.
And my name is Arun.
And today we're going to be continuing on our look back into spooky stop-motion animated films. Last time we took a look into Coraline, and this time around we're going to be taking a look at another Laika animated film, and that is Paranorman.
Yeah, and this actually was a pretty interesting addition to the Leica library because obviously once again we're doing with stop motion, and it's the way that they've done this is just so how creepy it is and just how unusual it is, and I think what they've done here has created something very special for us to talk about. So here we are talking about this. This movie.
All right, yeah. So the movie takes place in Massachusetts, where we're focusing on an 11-year-old boy named Norman Babcock, who is the outcast of his entire family and to the entire town because he is able to see and speak with the dead. Very similar to a certain movie by M. Night Shyamalan, where he is able to see dead people, but I digress. And yeah, so everybody in his family thinks that he's really odd that he's able to see dead people and speak to them. He's always saying about like how he's talking to his grandmother who's right by the sitting room watching TV when in reality there's nobody there. And he is ostracized by all of his classmates saying that he's a freak because he's able to speak with the dead. And there's an interesting thing that is happening around this time, this really spooky time, where the town is very well known for a witch that haunts the town. And so there is an instance where there's this really crazy outcast by the name of Mr. Prendergast, who is the town eccentric and who is also Norman's uncle, and he's also able to speak with the dead as well. And he is tasked by Norman that he has to incite like some ancient words from a book to calm down the witch every single year, and he isn't able to say anything further because he dies of a heart attack.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about this is I think him dying also adds to the tension of the movie because obviously now he is out of the scene, and I think he knew that his demise was imminent because he was so desperate to get obviously Norman involved in what was happening, and he needed to pass on the responsibility of reading the story to the witch in order to save the town effectively. And despite the fact that everyone thinks that Norman is is very strange and very weird, and so in a way like a noble thing is kind of like being passed on from one thing to another, but unfortunately obviously his uncle dies before that happens, like we said before. And I think that adds to the intrigue of where this is going to go. But I think it's really good that they went with this because then you get the other scene in the bathroom where where his uncle fulfills his destiny effectively of passing on this over to Norman, and then obviously he goes off to the great beyond after that and is left alone. The great thing about the curse is I think now that they get to that point is that they need to get to obviously these graves to tell the bedtime story to, but they realize that they've done it incorrectly and that's not where they needed to do it, and so the dead ends up raising anyway, and so then we end up in this horrendous situation of the town being, scared to death of the fact that there's all these, the undead is rising from the graves, and then they've got to figure out how to stop all of this. And the whole ride of going through that is the way that they've done it is very good.
Yeah. I mean, it's very akin to like a lot of zombie movies, like Dawn of the Dead, or any of the video games like Resident Evil, except that it's has a lot more social commentary in there, where usually in a lot of these zombie movies or zombie video games or books or what have you, they always have a social commentary about like, people who are very complacent about everything and just going along with the flow, or it's a cautionary tale about scientific experiments go wrong. But in this one, it's about accepting those who are deemed as odd and listening to what they have to say, because they have feelings too. They have a story that they want to be able to tell, and they have things that they are going through that people don't understand. And the way that a lot of people react to it is that they treat them really terribly, or they just ostracize them, or for the witch's case, they kill her off.
Yeah, I think there's the three things that I take away from this. I think the anti-bullying messages, I think, is the one I think that many people, I think, would take away from this, and the fact that Norman is ostracized for effectively being different from everybody else. I mean, forget the fact that he can talk to the dead and everything like that. There seems to be the way that they make this world is that it's like no one else is allowed to like be different from one another. Everyone has to like go into like their normal stereotypes. Whether it's like the one thing I do like about it is that they seem to take the horror movie, the thriller, like the kill spree movies. They seem to like take every stereotype of this, and they're not afraid to do commentary with it. It's not the fact that like it's like this person is like the dumb character. This person is like the character who is just brave and doesn't or doesn't understand going headstrong into something is going to end up with consequences. It's I mean, those characters do exist in Paranorman, but one thing they're not afraid to do is they're not afraid to like evolve the characters to say that this person has feelings, this person has other thoughts outside of the stereotype that is given in horror movies. So if anything, I think not only do they give a comedic effect to all our characters here, they also give us an understanding of this, and dare I say, I think that's what makes Paranorman like a really powerful Halloween favorite in that regard. But at the same time, they also put in messages that you wouldn't necessarily find in horror movies, like like the anti-bullying message that we talked about before, the fact that Norman is being treated differently from everybody else because of his abilities.
Yeah, not only that, with Norman being treated badly, but also when we get the backstory of who the witch is, in which she was treated horribly too. And you would think that, she's a witch, and witches do horrible things. They cast spells on people. But if you take a look at the setting, which is in Massachusetts, I mean, a lot of people know about the Salem witch trials, in which that any really strange thing that a woman is able to say or do, they call them a witch, and then they would be burned at the stakes, or they would be exiled somewhere else. And so in this case, we have a case in which you have this poor little girl whose name is Aggie, by the way, and she is the ancestor of Norman, we find out, and she also is able to speak and see the dead. And all of the townspeople don't even know what to make of it. They think she's a witch, and so they kill her off. And she's a child, by the way. So the fact that she was so angry at the townspeople for what they did, then they, killed her off, and they called her a witch because of the things that she wasn't able to control. She takes revenge on the town every single year by, casting a huge, terrible curse on it. And that was when you have, the tales of that, the only way to calm her down is to read a bedtime story. That way she can be able to fall asleep. And then within the next year, it has to happen over and over and over again. But then Norman thinks along the lines of, well, I mean, we tried doing this. I tried reading her to sleep. I tried talking to her, and, it doesn't seem to be working very well. And what if I just listen to her to find out what her situation is, and, giving an apology and basically saying, hey, I understand what you're going through because I'm going through the same thing. So yeah, that's a very powerful message that, something that is perceived as scary or something that we don't understand and we can easily just toss it aside. If you take the time to understand what they're going through, then you can see from a different point of view that you didn't even know of, or that you yourself are going through, and saying, well, I mean, yeah, you're not as scary as I thought you were.
Well, I think the great thing about the understanding message, I think, in this is that Aggie, I think, is first portrayed as like, she is like the enemy of this movie, if anything, and you're seeing it from the eyes of the humans in all of this, but you don't realize that on the other side of this is that you have this poor little girl who has this power, who she can't control and she can't understand it, and the first thing that everyone does is treat her as like an other, and effectively kill her because of it. And it's funny because Norman comes to Aggie from and gives her a different perspective of this, is that do not hold against them what they do, because they were ignorant of what they were doing at the time. And so the fact that Norman comes and shows compassion to Aggie and helps her by listening to what happened to her, and he shows empathy with what's going on with Aggie's plight. I think that is a great story to tell throughout this movie, and I think that is again like I can't think of another example that where they do this really well, where you start off with this threat and then you realize that the threat is not what it seems to be. And my only thought I can think of, which is a pretty terrible example really, it's kind of like Turning Red when May is finally gets to find out that her mother is not the person that she thinks she is, and actually she's got quite vulnerable and quite scared because of the power that she had, and so she's quite regretful about some of the actions that she did, and then you get to see the flow of like her growing up into like this person that she is today. And so I mean, it's not a great example.
Well, I mean, I can think of an example. The most recent podcast that we did a while ago was Looney Tunes: The Day the Earth Blew Up, in which you have these bubblegum zombies that are coming in. You have aliens who are basically behind it, and you have Porky, Daffy, and Petunia thinking, oh, it's the alien that's going to take over the world, but in reality, no, that's not the case at all. The alien was doing something completely different that had absolutely nothing to do with world domination.
I totally get where you're coming from, but I mean, I would say that was done more to comedic effect, really, rather than kind of was done like to say, oh, hey, the message is that the alien is not the bad guy. I think it's more the fact that you are supposed to believe that the alien is the bad guy in that, but then for the comedian, it's like, oh no, I was doing all this bubblegum to basically create a thing to protect the Earth from the asteroid that's coming. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, then it's like, so if anything, that was kind of done for more comedy, really, than it was to like do a serious message, at least in my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. But yeah, another thing that I really did enjoy about the commentary was that how sometimes ignorance can carry on throughout multiple generations, where you think that, okay, back then when the Salem witch trials were happening and people were killing off, various women or exiling them, it's because, they don't understand about that, certain things that women do or they say is, something that is not within their comfort zone. It's like, okay, if a woman is high strung about like certain beliefs, or, maybe she's going through a seizure, or maybe she's, like preparing something that may look like, oh, it's a witch's brew or something like that, then automatically we say, oh, witch. But yeah, you would think that, okay, yeah, I mean, that was hundreds of years ago. We've gotten past that point. We're more understanding and we're more willing to listen to people. No, because the moment that the zombies rise up, and even though that they're not attacking anybody, they're trying to actually warn the people about the witch. No, the people, the moment that they see them, they go with pitchforks and torches, and then they just try to kill them off, and they don't even listen to them.
Well, the great thing about like the whole ignorance angle is the fact that even the people who believe in the stories themselves are and even like want to protect the people, or even ignorant of like what's going on themselves, because the uncle at the end of the day thought, oh yeah, it's reading the bedtime story will just make this go away for like a while, and it's like, well, no, like the way that the way Norman handled it was the best way to handle it, because now Aggie is at rest. Whereas everybody else who believed in these stories and wanted to stop this from happening, they were like, oh no, bedtime story. We have to. That's what we have to do. And so I think the fact that even the people who believe in these stories and believe that you have to do something, you have to action it, the fact that they had to change their ways as well, I think that's a pretty powerful message in itself. So I think that was really really good with the way that they handled that.
Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned earlier was that a lot of these horror movies or thrillers, they always have like a stereotype in every character, and in Paranorman they do focus on some of those stereotypes, but at the same time they kind of play around with them from time to time. Like, for example, like Mitch, who is this bulky and strong jock who plays football, and you would think that, he's the popular guy, and he gets all the girls from school, and he is the macho guy who is able to save the day. No, that's not even close to who he is.
Yeah, he plays by Casey Affleck, by the way.
Yeah,
and he does a good job of playing that character too. And I think of the casting, I think actually in this, I think it's been very good. I can't think like there was like a miscast, I think, in this entire thing.
No,
I don't think. I think everyone played their part very, very well.
Yeah, they did a really great job,
I think, in that. And I think the one thing I think I like about him is that even though you have the stereotypical characters, I think also there's this thing that they have to not they like their stereotypes, but I think they're kind of like the society is sort of kind of like a theater where they have to play these roles, if you will. So like they don't like the idea that they have to be these people. They feel like they're obliged to be these people because that's the way their society functions.
Yeah, like Courtney is supposed to be like the popular girl who's very superficial, and she's a cheerleader, and she's really pretty, and she's dismissing her brother because he's a freak of nature, and so she's trying to uphold that perfect reputation. And you have,
well, the great thing about it is that she doesn't necessarily like it, and I think that's the thing I like about all these characters. They don't particularly like who I think they actually have, there's a lot of self-loathing, I think, also in this movie as well, for who they actually are.
Yeah,
because they're like that, like when they're in front of people, then behind the scenes they're kind of like they don't really like each other themselves that much, and they evolve to a point where they feel like they want to be the people they want to be.
Yeah, like
that's a great message.
Yeah, like for example, Alvin, the school bully, he's constantly like pushing around Norman and saying of how much of a freak he is, and then throughout the course of the movie, he starts letting his guard down, and he starts showing off his more timid and scared side when the zombies start coming up, and then he starts becoming a little bit of a flirt towards Courtney, so we do get to see a little bit of a multifacet towards him as well. And Neil, who is Mitch's younger brother, and he's like the stereotypical fat kid. It's like, there's that, but he's also very understanding towards Norman. He's the only kid in the entire class who is able to approach Norman and say, I think that you're weird, but I really like you. You're actually really cool. And he's actually very upfront, and he's very, very confident about what he is. And, that's something that also, plays out of the stereotype that you would expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a way that's also sort of, the only weakness I can kind of identify with the movie as well, is that, with these characters that we're introduced to, I mean, like, if you're an 80s and 90s kids, we've seen these characters multiple times. Mm-hmm. And, like, we've had Gilman from Recess, we've had Harold from Hey Arnold, we've had, like, Roger Klotz from Doug. I mean, like, not really an example, I think, compared to, the bully in this movie. But, I mean, like, we've seen bully characters before, and then all of a sudden we see, like, a different side of them that they felt like they weren't allowed to express because, they were just seen as, like, the big bully, and they feel like in society they weren't allowed to be anything else.
Yeah,
and so we've seen these characters before. I think that's the only weakness I would say with Paranorman. But I mean, like, if you're willing to, like, sweep that aside and, like, you're not dorks like us, then I think I think you'll be fine. I think enjoying Paranorman in this.
Yeah, and one of the good things is that the characters are able to learn from their ignorances and are able to grow as characters. Like, in the beginning of the movie, Norman's father was very dismissive of Norman's, gifts of being able to see the dead. And he says that, why don't you go play sports and stop talking about grandma? She's dead already. And, start acting like a normal kid. And so, yeah, he becomes like an ignorant jerk throughout the beginning of the movie. And then towards like the end, he starts seeing the zombies rise from the dead, and, the witch coming about and putting the curse in the town. And so then he starts realizing that Norman is the only one who can be able to save this town, and so he becomes more accepting of it.
Yeah, again, it's like, it's the dad who, like, says, oh, I have to be the boss of the household, and my way goes, and everyone has to act like the way they should be. And then all of a sudden he's confronted with a situation that he cannot totally handle, and then he's basically, forced into the fact that he has to, like, kind of, like, he has to do something. Which, by the way, I'm really glad, like, the dad didn't go into, like, the whole, like, when Norman has to, like, go forward and do that. Like, I'm really glad that the dad reinforces the fact that he needs, to do this, and we didn't get, like, the whole, like, how many times have we been in movies where the dad, like, says, oh, no, you're not putting your life on the line for this creative point, and and everything like that. Like, I'm so sick. We've grown up with that dad pretty much in all the movies that we've seen, like, like Small Soldiers, like, the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Like, there is, like, and then the son has to be, look, there is no other way. I'm the only one who can do this, and he's, like, forced to, like, say, all right, then I do not like what you are doing, but I will support you anyway. And it's like, I'm glad we have a really supportive dad in all of this. Like,
for sure.
I'm really glad that the Chicken Little dad, I think, has probably been, like, finally been roasted and eaten. So,
okay. Yeah. So we enjoyed the story. We enjoyed the characters. Let's talk about the animation, because this is coming after the success of Coraline, and Laika was able to do a lot more techniques. Like, this is one of the very first stop motion films where they use, like, 3D models, and also the second film where they were able to shoot in 3D. So yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Well,
of it?
I was a bit worried when obviously we came with Coraline, and when we went to Paranorman, I was a bit worried the fact that they were just gonna take kind of like the same techniques of Coraline, and they were just gonna, like, just impose it onto Paranorman, but they didn't do that actually.
No.
They gave Paranorman its own style. They gave Paranorman its own color scheme. They gave Paranorman it's a very, very, like, the one thing you feel like with Norman is that this world is just so dreary, and it is just so, you see it from his point of view.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you get to the other characters and you see, the lightings of the places actually changes, because you actually see from their point of view, like, oh yeah, nothing's kind of wrong, like, everything's just the way the normal is. But then when you get back to to Norman, and I'm not talking about the scenes where he's, like, seeing all the ghosts and everything like that. Like, from his point of view, everything is just so domineering over him, and his world is just so hard to deal with, and you can feel that in the way that the visuals are kept, and the way that his interpretation of the characters are, and you see things from his point of view and his camera angles and things like that. They do that very well in this movie.
Yeah, and a lot of green emphasis in this movie. Like, when you see Norman seeing the ghost, it's green. When you see the zombies coming out of the ground, it's green. When you see the lighting of of when the witch starts appearing, it's a little bit of yellow mixed with green. So yeah, very bright, very strong colors compared to something like Coraline, in which is like, you have the dreariness and the drab in the real world, and then when you go to the other world, it's so bright, it's so happy, it's so colorful. Then when the beldam starts revealing her true self, it starts becoming gray and black and white. And so yeah, the colors in Coraline were really good. But then when you see the colors in Paranorman, yeah, I mean, it's a very strong emphasis on autumn. Like, you can definitely see, like, the blue, the browns and the oranges. And then when you see, like, from Norman's perspective, it's a lot of greens, it's a lot of yellows. It's, very darkish colors in his palette. So yeah, I think it's and also the style of the faces of the characters are also vastly different too than Coraline. It's not something like let's say with Aardman Animation, in which you see Chicken Run, you see Wallace and Gromit, you see Creature Comforts, and you see all the other stop motion films that they've done, and it looks like they're the same. It looks like that they take place in the same universe, and for the most part, it does. Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, and Shaun the Sheep, they all take place within the same universe, and they even have references and homages and Easter eggs of one another. With Paranorman, you can't really do that, where you can mix Paranorman with Coraline. The faces and the designs are completely different, which is a really nice touch, considering that it's a similar animation studio that were able to do these two movies, but they look different. It doesn't have, like, the Pixar touch, in which, like, they look pretty much the same. They have the same animation style, and they're able to have a lot of homages and Easter eggs with one another. It's very akin to, like, DreamWorks, in which, like, Shrek doesn't look like Prince of Egypt, Egypt, and Prince of Egypt doesn't look like the bad guys, and the bad guys doesn't look like Over the Hedge, and Over the Hedge doesn't look like Puss in Boots, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the fact that this was their third movie, well, second if you want to count, you know, their original stuff after they were doing Corpse Ride with Tim Burton. They were able to stand on their own, and they were able to succeed in strides with it.
Yeah. And just looking at the style of it, and also the amount of work they had to put into this as well. Like, you know, I mean, we go on this all the time every time we do a stop motion animation movie, but you know, like the amount of work that goes into it, I really implore people to look at the behind the scenes work of like whether it's Arun Animations, whether it's Leica, whether it's whatever DreamWorks might be doing, or whether you know, other studios that employ or whatever Del Toro does as well. Like, you know, with Pinocchio, for example, like they do like. I think there's a thing on Instagram where they show you like them, animating Pinocchio, just walking and running, and it's just the amount of effort that goes into it, and probably the amount of days and the months that go into it. It is a really unique art form, and anybody who has the pleasure of watching one of these works and being able to see the amount of emotion and the amount of hard work that's put into all of this, it's just a trip, from start to finish.
Yeah, and in every single Leica film, at the end credits, they always play off a clip of one of the animators putting together a scene from the movie, just so you can see how much work it puts into it. Like an entire day's worth of work, like 8 hours. The amount of seconds that you see in a movie is like 5 seconds. Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you that it takes years and years and years to do a stop motion animated film. And it's not easy, because if you do like one mess up, you have to do the whole thing all over again.
Well, the design process must also be, very taxing as well, because you have to not only have to create characters, but you have to say to the animators and the people who are going to be putting this together, is like, will this be feasible for what we're going to do? And I probably imagine there was a lot of back and forth, I probably would imagine, about finally coming with a final, design of what these characters are going to look like, because you look at the character designs, they are absolutely very unique. I'd be very surprised if people weren't frustrating themselves with every time they had to move Norman's head around, and you got to be careful with how they've sculpted his hair and everything like that, and also the fact that the way that the characters were also probably painted, probably the way that they were the way that they were sculpted as well. I probably imagine that created a lot of challenges. So there's that also those considerations you have to take into account as well.
And also
goes to show how amazing this whole thing is.
And also not to mention that there's a lot of different set pieces compared to Coraline. You have the entire town, you have the town hall, you have the school, you have the graveyard, you have the library, you have Norman's house, you have Neil's house. You have a whole bunch of different set pieces compared to like Coraline, in which you have, they're in the house, they go into the car in town, and then you have the other mother's side, which is basically just the house, but in a different different design and different world. But yeah, I mean, you have a lot more set pieces in Paranorman. I mean, they're driving a car, they have to do a lot of running because they're trying to go away from the zombies. You have you have a lot of different, you also have a lot of, different things that are in the background, like, gravestones and trees and it's just a lot more expanded compared to Coraline. So I'm sure that they had to put a lot of work into the backgrounds as well. Yeah, and I guess to wrap things up, so Paranorman is going to be getting a new short because this month it's going to be re-released in theaters. So I read a little bit about it. So it's called Paranorman: The Thrifting, and it's going to be shown off as a short before you get to see the re-release of Paranorman in theaters, and it's going to be done by the same people who worked on the movie. So that should be really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see that, and so a nice double feature, I think, if everybody's a fan of the movie. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in checking it out, it's on select theaters, and it'll be running from October 25th to the 28th. So I mean, I'm curious to see how they're going to be able to add into the story, or maybe go into more in depth about what happened during the events of the movie. I'm not too sure about it, but it should be really good to see.
Cool.
Yeah, so final thoughts on Paranorman.
Really good visuals. I think a very good story, and I think the fact that there's a lot of good messages in there in regards to an anti-bullying messages, an empathy message, and also like a message about family as well. And I think they managed to create something. I think that takes all the important things and mold this all together. And they've actually created like a really great project. And it's a shame really because Leica movies, as we all know, I don't think get the full appreciation I think that they get. And so anybody this Halloween gets a chance to check out Paranorman, then we definitely recommend it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a shame that Paranorman and Coraline and various other films from Leica just don't seem to get the attention they deserve, because every time that they release a movie, even though that they get critically acclaimed, they make less money. The last movie that they did, which was Missing Link, it was a massive bomb because it released in the same weekend, I kid you not, as Avengers Endgame. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so there will be a new Leica film coming out next year, and that's going to be going back into the roots of what they're pretty much well known for a little bit, was the spooky and creepy atmosphere. Because for the remaining movies that they did, which was Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and Missing Link, they strayed away from that. They did some other things, which is to be commended. They were trying to branch out and do some other things to kind of like break away from we only just do spooky stop motion stuff. Box Trolls, it was pretty decent. I mean, it's an interesting story about a young kid who was raised by trolls and now is integrating himself into human society. Kubo and the Two Strings takes a little bit of cues from Japanese mythology. And Missing Link is basically like a interesting telling about Sasquatch, the missing link, and him going back into where he originally belonged in, even though that he was raised in proper modern society. So, yeah, I mean, every single one of these films that came out afterwards were just box office bomb after box office bomb, or just barely making enough, which is a real shame because Leica put in their hearts and souls into everything that they craft. It's just that they are not a huge success compared to something like Illumination, in which they make billions of dollars.
Well, I mean, like I like to think that Leica makes art, and I think that Illumination make a product. So.
There you go. Anyway, so yeah, if you're thinking that the next movie we're going to be talking about is another Leica film, well, unfortunately, you're going to be sadly disappointed. We're going to be going into Tim Burton once again, and we're going to be talking about Frankenweenie.
Yeah, so, I mean, okay, it's not Leica, but it's something exciting.
Yeah, that's true. And we're going back into Tim Burton again, which we haven't done over the past 2 years, ever since we did Tim Burton month, when we talked about Beetlejuice, and we did Edward Scissorhands' Nightmare Before Christmas. We did, Corpse Bride, and we did all of those films. So yeah, we're going back into Tim Burton again, so that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Paranorman, and if you are going to be one of those people who is going to be seeing Paranorman in theaters again, let us know about how the new short turns out. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.
Bye-bye.